Welcome back, everyone, to R2Kast number 80. On Monday there, we had Jane Craigie Marketing with the founder, Jane Craigie, and Rebecca Dawes and Claire Taylor talking about how you market rural businesses and how that business starts and the stories behind the people involved in the company, which was a good chat. Could you let me know whether you want to get in touch on Facebook, Instagram? I don't know if you can get in touch on Spotify. I'm pretty sure you can. I don't know. Just get in touch with me on Rural to Kitchen somewhere, saying if you like this sort of group podcast idea. I think people are quite enjoying it. I'm fair enjoying it because I get to meet even more people than I already am. And then next week is an interesting one as well, because we have a Nuffield scholar coming on, and Michael Blanche. You may have heard of the Farming Ladder. I'm not going to try and ruin what it is and tell you about it because I will definitely get it wrong. But today for R2Kast 80, we have someone I've wanted to have on for some time, and then she put a post up, which we'll talk about later on in the podcast, just a few weeks ago, and I'm like, right, Wallace, get in touch now. This has to happen. So Bizza Walters is our guest today. Bizza, would you like to say hello?
Yes, hello everybody. Thank you very much, Wallace, for having me on as well.
Just before we get started with another episode of the R2Kast, I would like to thank our primary sponsors, A-Plan Rural. A-Plan Rural are heavily involved on the social media scene in the ag space with 120,000 followers on Instagram. They use this following to host social media takeovers with farmers throughout the country to showcase their stories. They also post to their rural community blog with further stories about these people in the industry. On top of this, they like to support initiatives that are championing the British agricultural industry, such as myself. So thank you to A-Plan Rural for that.
Not at all. Very much looking forward to it. I'm sure it will be, as I always say, another interesting story, which I've got to stop saying. It's such a boring statement. There's got to be another
catchphrase, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I need a better catchphrase. I was actually speaking to someone. They'd asked me if I wanted to be on their programme for the podcast, and they had said yes. And someone said you could put a wee caption that says Wallace Curry, a face for podcasting. I was like, oh, I see how it is. Yeah, Bizza, could you tell us a little bit of backstory? Are you from farming? Was farming always for you?
Yeah, so I am from a farming family. Where I am at the moment, Castle Farm, was bought by my great-grandfather in the 1930s, and it's predominantly sheep. We've got about 500 acres in a ring fence, and then we have land elsewhere as well, mostly for hay. We do a lot of hay as well as sheep. So my dad farms here at the moment with his two brothers. They are third generation. Not sure what's going to happen, if there will be a fourth generation here, but yeah, that's another story. So yeah, we've got diversification here as well. We've got a merchant feed business that dad runs. We sell a lot of Ramenko and Denji products. We've got a commercial shoot, although that's not gone ahead this year due to avian flu. And we've also got fishing lakes, and we've got a few holiday lets as well. So lots to keep us busy.
Oh my God, that was endless.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned Denji. I actually worked for the company that owned the majority share in the harvest of Denji crops.
Oh, okay.
Down in Essex, and it was quite interesting, really interesting.
Yeah.
So he's one I want to jump onto. We've had Will Rubottom, who I'm pretty certain you know.
Yes, yeah. Will was actually with me here on the farm in the summer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So Will obviously is in the same line of work in that sense, but one of the major issues that a lot of folk in that line of work this year had was the drought over the summer. How did that hit you guys?
I say we're lucky. In the summer, we're quite lucky. We have like marl soil, so it's really heavy clay soil, and it holds water. So it floods in the winter just because when we have so much water, but it actually holds the moisture in the summer. So we didn't start feeding hay into our ewes until September time. So we managed to hold off. And we also, because we sell a lot of Ramenko products, we've got the blocks readily available. So we had blocks out for the ewes. We've got about 600-700 ewes at the moment, but we have land elsewhere, so we could keep rotating them around and rest fields when we needed to. So it didn't affect us hugely on that front. And then with the hay, we have quite a few. Where we're Warwickshire, so surrounded by places like Solihull, where you have a lot of smallholders that have got 40 acres and 4 sheep. So they've got all this grass that they don't know what to do with. So because dad's got this feed merchant business, he's out and about a lot, meeting new people and new clients, and they say, oh, we've got this 40 acres of grass that we don't know what to do with. And Dad says, well, we can take it as hay. So that's how we've managed to get all these little, I mean, they're little parcels of land, but they're everywhere. And we just go in, take the hay off it, and then, it's done for them for another year and they've got their grass down. So it works quite well.
Definitely. So you say, I think it was 500 acres you said at the start. Is that including these little bits that you...
No, so that's just at home. Yeah, at home in Warwickshire on the farm, 500 acre ring fence.
And how did the feed business come about? Was that your dad that started that?
This has been, I think this started when I was very, very little, if not before.
Right.
Yeah, it's PM Walters and Sons, feed merchants, and we've always dealt with Remenko and sold Remenko products. We did a lot of horsey stuff as well before. We still do Dengi, but Dad wanted to focus more on the agricultural side of it rather than equine. It's
quite good to sort of have like a focus, but also sort of touch into both markets, because the equine market is a good one, obviously.
Yeah, and he also he supplies little like feed stores in our area, and obviously they sell, they'll sell your bag of chaff for your horse owner, but then they also sell your lip bucket for your smallholder. So it's quite a good market around here. Yeah,
definitely. The shoot obviously not happening this year because of bird flu. For people that don't know about bird flu, it is worse than COVID for the birds. Like, it's the solution is lock them in, and that just leads to, well, I'm not going to say the words, but domestic abuse in the bird world. So we try to make it friendly, if we will. It's hellish.
Yeah,
but
and we've tried, so hard, haven't we, as an industry to, stop battery farming and all the rest of it, and let, birds be free range, especially hens, and, your free range eggs. And now suddenly we're doing a U-turn when we're having to do it all again. But I think, it's fair to say this one is obviously with the welfare of the animals, because if you let them out and they get bird flu, there is no happy ending to that, is there?
That's it. But I think the way it also goes is if you don't have the right resources, which you don't have to have because you get free range hens, to put them inside, it's just as bad an end. But the shoot's slightly unrelated to that. It was more of a side story. Do you get involved in the shoot yourself?
So I have a dog. I have a Labrador. Although she's about to turn 12, so she just does her own thing now. But she comes picking up with me, and she lives for it. And I don't shoot. I've never shot, like physically shot. I just prefer working the dog. I get more enjoyment out of that.
That's a skill, though.
Well, I mean, I don't say it doesn't go to plan all the time, obviously. But because we have a lot of like people that take it really seriously, and they do field trialing, and they come picking up here, and they've got their dogs, they've got bring 10 Labradors that all just sit really well, and they don't move, and they go when they're told. And then I've got Bronte, my black lab, who just kind of bumbles off and runs in the middle of a drive. But because obviously it's our shoot, not this is an excuse, she gets away with it. So it's like, oh, there's Bronte again, she just ignore her.
She's also 12, but she's
12, and she's just such a queen. She's lovely. Oh, she's such a sweetie.
And one of my favourite things, I don't know if you're involved in this side either, one of my favourite things is just sitting by a burn or a lake or whatever. It's not something I've done often, with a beer and fishing. So is it fishing lakes, you said?
Yeah.
Is that an experience? Does someone take folk with them, or do they just
no? So they just I mean, I don't really know anything about the fishing pools, I must admit, but they're like, I think there's carp in them. That sounds about right. And so people can come. It's like, I think it's £10 a rod, and they just sit and fish, but obviously it's catch and release, so put them back. Sure. People in the summer come and do night fishing. We have quite a few people, so we're literally on the edge of Birmingham, so we have quite a few dads that bring young sons out on a Friday night, and they'll go and sit by the lake, and it's quite sweet. It gets them out of the cities and into more rural areas, so we're all for
it. And it is such a, is serene the word? I don't know. There's something just so nice about just sitting and all you can hear is the water. I love it. We used to do quite a lot of boat fishing, so you could also hear the engine. But it was good fun. Got some pretty good memories from that. Involving
I bet.
Catching, my papa caught himself right through his hand once.
No.
As a 7-year-old, I had to get him back. And it's a good story. It's a good story. So really, actually, the long story is a good one, but we don't have time for the long story. So a heavily diversified place. just about doing everything you could really consider with what you have. Could you tell us a bit more and focus about the farm itself, so the sheep enterprise?
Yeah, so I mentioned we've got 600-700 head of North Country mule flock. That's our commercial flock that we put to a Suffolk tup. We lamb in February, middle of February, about 4 to 6 weeks, depending on how long the tup's been in, obviously, in the autumn. Fatten everything here, and then they all go off to the abattoir. So we creep feed, and then they go off, and everything's gone by September time. We use a lot of Romenco products, and we actually this year, and going back to the drought, as you mentioned, I know I've had a lot of people have had like the worst scanning this year they've ever had because it was so dry, couldn't flush the ewes. We actually scanned at, I think, 208% this year,
right?
Which is, considering the summer we had, we're absolutely thrilled with. Probably too good, actually. Last year we scanned at, I think, 225%, but it's because we overflushed them. And Dad holds his hands up. We overflushed them, and with Romenco products. Not that that's a bad thing at all, because obviously you want a higher scanning percent, but 225 was a bit high. I
think overflushing is something that can happen with North Country. They're supposed to be one of
but for what we wanted, you want 200%, don't you? You don't want 225.
Yeah, 100%.
So we went a bit hard on them, and so we didn't flush them this year with blocks, and they still came out at 208. So
I think that one of the benefits of getting involved in February, lambing time in February, is you're getting ahead of that sort of prices starting down, which is good. And the problem with that lambing percentage, or scanning percentage, I should say, this year, was on top of the difficult summer. It's also been, I don't know if this has hit you as much, a pretty notably cold winter. People having some pretty major issues there as well, having already delved into their winter forage over the summertime as well.
Well, we were quite lucky that we didn't have to delve into winter forage. Because we didn't have the grass, but we had more grass than most, and also because we have so much hay, we keep as much back as we need, and then we sell. Dad's actually literally just gone past in the tractor because we're loading a lorry up and back loading up to Scotland with hay. So yeah, I mean, we're in a very fortunate position, which we're aware of. We've got the hay, we've got the forage available, and we didn't have to feed much at all over the summer.
Will you be selling hay all year round?
So we had a lot go out over the autumn, and then come lambing time it stops then, because obviously we're using it, we don't have time to load lorries to go back up, and then obviously it's then coming into haymaking season, and then it all starts again. So
you've got that commercial flock there, but I know there's something a bit closer to your heart.
Yeah,
tell us about your flock.
My Dartmoors. So I've got how many ewes have I got now? 7 grey-faced Dartmoor ewes and 2 tups. So I've got 9 in total, which is big in the game.
Absolutely.
So I got 2 ewes and a tup for my birthday in 2021. So it was beginning of last year. So January last year. Or was it 2020? I can't remember. It was a couple of years ago anyway. And they came from a local farm park that was closing down. So that's Brenda and Diane, and my 2 ewes that came from there, and then Dougie. Dougie has since been sold because I've kept his daughter's daughter, and I got a new tup from a guy called Sam Walton, who's up in Derbyshire. He's Sam on the Farm on Instagram for anyone who wants to follow him.
I've definitely heard that name before.
He is brilliant. So I went to pick Ernie up from him in March, and Ernie he served 4 out of 5 he served all 5 ewes, but Brenda, just because they came from a farm park, they are morbidly obese. Like, she is absolutely ginormous, and she's just totally useless, basically. She gave me a lamb this year. Last year she didn't have anything, and she's barren this year as well, so she's just part of the furniture now. She's
Brenda.
Poor Brenda. And then I bought 2 more ewes this year, and I had 2 ewe lambs this year and a ewe lamb last year, so I've got 7 now. But I don't put the ewe lambs in lamb the year they're born, like 18 months or so, just because they're quite big sheep and they need quite a long time to mature, in my opinion anyway. So yeah, that's what I've got at the moment. So I've got should be expecting 6 lambs in February time from there.
Excellent. Exciting times.
Yes, I know. Gonna be very busy.
We'll be speaking to you in a few years, and it'll be 50 or 60 you'll have.
Well, you say that. I mean, I'm gonna have to. It's all because of the, I say, family politics here, I think if I want to expand it any more than it is, I'm going to have to take them off the farm and find land elsewhere.
Yeah, fair. I get that. I get
Yeah,
that. And
yeah.
am I right in saying, I'm pretty sure I saw a photo over summer that you showed them? Is that right?
No, I don't show
No,
them. I could do. I've got one, Bertha, who is Diane's lamb from last year. She's a beautiful ewe. I could show her, but they're just pets at the moment. And to be honest, because I've been on the NFU Student and Young Farmer Ambassador Programme this year, I just haven't had the time. So everything's been, and then I was lambing and I got a new job and everything's just been so busy. Maybe next year I'll have the time to do it.
You mentioned about the student ambassadorship at the NFU. I've seen through Instagram a lot of folk that do this, and English NFU seem very much better at promoting the campaign than the Scottish NFU. Sorry if you're listening, NFU Scotland. But there is a young ambassador programme, the Scottish NFU, but nothing really happens. What you guys do seems extremely good. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I actually didn't even know that you guys had. So that just backs your point up even more. Sorry, Scottish NFU.
You didn't know there's an NFU Scotland?
I didn't even know. I did. Yeah. I knew there was an NFU Scotland, but I didn't know obviously that there was a young person ambassador program.
No, it's. I mean, I'm pretty certain I am one. From about 6 years ago, and
okay.
And I haven't been to meetings at that place for however long, and I still hear that I am one. So yeah, it would be something if I was ever to get involved in the NFU, I'd really like to sort of try and you guys are doing down south, because it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic program. So it's a year-long program starting in January, and we're just about to hand over to the new cohort this coming January. And we've done so much. We've had training days, like writing training, media training. We had a tour of HQ. We went to conference. We've been down to see the Kenyan pig farmer Flavian, who's down in Hampshire. We had a tour around there.
Great guy. And
Houses of Parliament with James Gray, who's the MP for North Wiltshire. He sponsored us and took us around Parliament. And we went to the Lord Mayor's show back in November. We've done loads. Induction, which was back in March. And then we've got this handover in January as well.
What does the handover involve? Is that?
I think it's meeting the new cohort and just chatting to them and, telling them what we've done and what, to look out for, sort of thing, the opportunities that come with this program, all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Just if you're listening and you want to check out the Kenyan pig farmer, I'm pretty sure his podcast was number 4. I think I did, or was it 5? Around near the start. He was the first ever interview I did when I kicked off all this stuff with Flavian. Great guy.
He's fab. He's brilliant.
He's so funny as well. His stories are great, guy. Was that through being a student, or was that through being a young farmer, the ambassador?
What as in how did I get onto the program?
Yeah.
So I wasn't a student at the time I applied, and actually one of the ambassadors from the year before, Katie Smith, was in my Young Farmers Club at home, and she sent me the application link and she said, I really think you should apply for this, it'd be really good for you to do. So she helped me with my application, sent it off, and I was offered a place for the West Mids, one of the West Mids ambassadors.
Excellent. And could you tell us, you mentioned uni and young farmers there, we'll get to young farmers in a second. Could you tell us about uni, what you studied, where you studied?
I went to the Royal Agricultural University in Cirencester and studied applied farm management. So it was 80% of the business side of agriculture and then 20% practical.
Is that 3 years? Is that right?
Yeah, 3 years with a 6-month placement in the summer between years 2 and 3.
Oh, excellent. That's the one thing that quite a lot of Scottish people feel outdone by.
Oh, really? Do you not have placements?
No, we've got to do 4 years.
Oh, 4?
Yeah, well, as a student, I had to do it. Now we teach it for 4 years, but the placement thing's funny. It mentioned that our college is piloting, I guess you could say, the first ever what's called Next Gen up in Scotland. So we now are integrating a placement into the first year, and it's actually in the first year. Yeah, and then also the second year, and we haven't got the stage of writing third and fourth year yet. So I don't know what
so it's very new.
Yeah. Oh no, literally very new. We're writing the second year at the minute and doing the first year. So it's
wow. Okay.
Quite fun.
How does that work? Sorry, I'm digressing. But how does that work? Like, when would they do their placement?
So the way the placement works at the minute, again, obviously sort of trying this out, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, is 1 day a week throughout the course of the term, the year, from maybe about week 6, because we don't want to just throw folk in straight away without any, so we give them a few weeks worth of sessions on obviously the start of their course, and then also how to deal with the placement, how to arrange it. Do you have one? Where can we get you to go? And the aim is first year to be sort of farm based. Second year, sort of if you can progress on to assisting maybe in the sort of management side of the farm, or even into the sort of service side, much like you do in your day job, which we'll get into as well. That's sort of the thing. And then as we go into third year and fourth year, I don't strictly know exactly what will happen there, because we're just not there yet. But it's pretty cool actually. It's different to what I did. I did the old form, and the benefits I'm seeing are good. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. Young farmers, a thing that I am recently involved in, only started in the last 8 months, so quite a late starter at 25. But how long have you been involved in young farmers, Bizza?
I've been in young farmers, I think, since I was 14, so 10 years now. But it's quite a sore subject in our house, because we live in Warwickshire, but we're right on the Warwickshire-Worcestershire border, and a lot of the Warwickshire Young Farmers events happen kind of North Warwickshire, so I'm South Warwickshire, and it's a good 45-minute jaunt for me to get to event like parties or stock judging or anything like that. And I have some older cousins who live on the farm, and they went across into Worcestershire and joined Withall Young Farmers, which is the club I'm now in. But Dad was actually chairman of, at the time, the local Warwickshire branch, which was Stratford and Studley. So when I announced that I was heading off over into Worcestershire, it's such a sore subject. I've never seen someone so offended.
It's a bone of contention, that.
It really is. So when I was getting involved in the NFU, end of last year, he's chairman of our local branch, and he said, no, this is Warwickshire NFU, you're not going into Worcestershire. So that's where I was like, oh, okay, we'll compromise.
I would like to have seen the dinner table conversation.
Oh, it was not good. And I've been in Withall 10 years now, and I'm chairman of Withall this year. Right. So, I'm heavily involved, but it's still a very, very touchy subject.
I would just like to quickly interrupt the show for a minute to give you some extra information on our primary sponsors, A-Plan Rural. A-Plan offer bespoke cover for farms and estates the UK over, and will give you tailored insurance for anything on the farm, from your old workhorse tractor that's been around 20 years or a fancy new and exciting diversification.
Kira, a lot of people that listen to this podcast are looking to get into farming, and young farmers is a massive avenue. It's one that many folk use. Could you tell us about your sort of movement from starting at 14 to now obviously being chairperson, as you said, what's been involved throughout that time? Apart from a lot of family arguments.
Politics, I went to my first meeting. I think my cousins took me because they're 6, 7, 8 years older than me. So at the time they were heavily involved in young farmers. So they took me along. And so I was basically the only junior at the time in Withall. So I was doing all the competitions as a junior, like floristry, woodwork, cake decorating, at rally, all those competitions. And then started doing A-levels. So that took over. Then went off to uni. So again, wasn't really around. Got back from uni in 2019. So then got involved again, all the competitions, that sort of stuff. And then obviously COVID hit, which was, I think a lot of young farmers as a federation was very worried, because it's some clubs have folded. I'm sure trying to get young people into agriculture is dwindling, and it's a very relentless thing to do, something we need to do. So when COVID hit, we just thought, oh my god, this is the worst thing at the moment that could happen. So we tried doing lots of Zoom things and Teams calls and quizzes, and we did a scavenger hunt around the house one evening, all on Teams, and we were just trying to keep it really fun. And then when they said, when rules were easing and they said, people can start going out again, we did have people come over for farm walks, and people came and met the Dartmoors, and we just tried to get people to meet up, socially distanced but in person, because you've got a bunch of 14-year-old lads, they don't want to sit on Zoom and do a scavenger hunt around the house. So as soon as we could, we got them out and about again, and then we went back into lockdown, so we were having to do it all again. And we thought, we were quite worried with Withall, because we were at that, it goes in peaks and troughs, doesn't it, with membership, and we were quite a small club at the time, and we thought, oh my gosh, this is probably going to break us. people, because then 2 years has gone and everyone's gone off to uni, or people have just lost interest. But luckily for us, everyone was desperate to come back, and we had so many people over lockdown that were like, oh my God, it was the worst thing, sat in the house. I wanted to be out and about. And we've got so many people from non-farming backgrounds now in Young Farmers in Withall, and I think we're up to about 50 members, and we're one of the strongest clubs in Worcestershire. So it's going really well. I'm chairman this year, and a very good friend of mine is secretary, although she basically runs the club. She's my right hand man. I couldn't do it without her. So she tells me what I need to do, where I need to be. And then in the new year, we're going to start prepping for Rally, which is in May. And that's the big day of competitions. All the clubs in the county get together, and there's all sorts going on. It's going to be, a really good day.
Excellent. So if you're listening, and maybe even you're in the Withall, is that right?
Withall, yeah.
Withall area, maybe you could join. Business club, not business club, but the secretaries are amazing. If you get the right secretary,
honestly, yeah. And people come up to me and they say, "Oh my gosh, you're doing such a fantastic job," and I'm like, I haven't done anything. I literally, this is all Hannah. Hannah's done. She keeps the club together, and she actually got Secretary or Treasurer of the Year for Worcestershire County back at the county AGM in October. And I was like, oh, thank God that she's being, praised for her work, because she's amazing.
Well, shout out Hannah.
Yeah, big shout out to Hannah.
Yeah. You've travelled a bit with lambing. Could you tell us, you've been to a few places. Most people go 20 miles down the road to try something different, but you've certainly ventured quite far. Could you tell us a bit about those travels with it? Yeah,
sure. So 2020, I think it was, I left my job working in a feed merchant store, not at home, somewhere completely different. Came back and I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do now. It was during COVID. I thought I really probably shouldn't have left that job, because I'm not going to find another one. But that's the one good thing about agriculture, is there is always work available. So I thought, well, why don't I just go off lambing for 5 months? So I got onto the NSA, National Sheep Association website, and found somewhere there, which was in Glasgow, just north of Glasgow, near Killern and Balfron. So I was there in the April. I lambed at home in the February, March, and then went on like 5 miles down the road to another local farmer. So this was in 2021. And then I went to Glasgow. Then after Glasgow, I went up to Stronsay, which is a really small island just off Orkney, mainland Orkney. And I was there for 5 weeks, where I was lambing and we were calving and doing field work and all sorts. And it was amazing. And because I couldn't travel properly at the time because of COVID, I thought, this is like my traveling. And then this year I did the same again, lambed at home, lambed for local farmer, went back to Glasgow, and then I went to mainland Orkney this year. And then I went up to Iceland as well from there.
Iceland is one place that I just love. I went on holiday there once. I tried to learn the language. What's that?
I remember sat at the dinner table and they were the mum couldn't speak any English. And so I was there like, hope you don't expect me to learn this, because I'm terrible with languages. Like French is, hard enough for me. So Icelandic is a no-go.
Well, I'm going to say this, and if someone listening Icelandic, because I know there is, 2% of my listeners are Icelandic. So
okay.
I'm probably going to say this wrong, but I believe Gamla Hítithik is how are you today? And I used to know how to order food. No, I can't remember. Do you know Farm Life Iceland? Have you seen them on Instagram?
Yes, I have.
I've had Paulina on the podcast.
Okay.
Really interesting one. Talked about red deer and all that sort of thing, the major gather and all that. But could you tell us how you experienced Iceland?
Very cold, extremely cold. I was there in May and it was -5 and snowing, and the water pipes were freezing, and it was so cold, but a beautiful country, absolutely stunning. And the family I were with, it was a mother and a father and a daughter. The daughter was my age and she was studying veterinary in Denmark, and her boyfriend were back for lambing, but they were lambing about 350-400 Icelandic sheep, but it was a hobby for them. So unless you've got 2,000 sheep, you can't make a living off just 400 sheep. So they all took 4 weeks holiday, that was their holiday for the year, and they spent it lambing these sheep, which I found fascinating, because you've got people that can survive off, I don't know, 300 sheep here.
Yeah, exactly. Am I right in saying it's only Icelandic sheep on Iceland?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything else.
I'm positive that's what Paulina said. I'm sure it's illegal to import something else?
Yeah, they're very, very, very hot on their biosecurity. So when I went over, I remember I messaged the daughter and I said, what do I need to bring? And, like workload wise. And she said, nothing, we'll provide you with work clothes here and boots. And I was like, are you sure? Because I've got stuff that's brand new in packets, I can bring that. And she was like, no, we're really tight on biosecurity. So they had a lorry container that you would go into in the morning, change into your work clothes and your work boots, go out and work, and then you'd go back in there for lunch, change again back into like these sorts of clothes, your house clothes, and then go back into the house.
Right.
They were that tight on disease and
I think probably some people look at it and think it's over the top, but if if it's working, it's working.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say something about Iceland. Yeah, you mentioned it was cold. Funnily enough, when I went, it was the 6th of December. We left Glasgow in 4 degrees and got to Iceland at 6.
Oh my god!
I just spent like 300 quid on all these jackets and everything.
Yeah,
it was colder in Glasgow.
But it's warmer. Oh my god! Typical, isn't it?
Yeah, it was completely typical. What your day job is advisor? Is that right?
Yeah, so like a rural advisor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's that for, and how did you get into that?
That is for a company called Mole and Co. And it's when I got back lambing from Iceland and I didn't have anything lined up afterwards. To be honest, I was quite pleased for a bit of a break. I was exhausted. So I was down south on holiday and I had a phone call through to say, someone I know is actually looking for someone to come in for maternity cover to start with, to take over, that sort of work. Would you be interested? And I said, yes, I need a job, I'm not going to say no. So I went and had a chat with this woman, and it's basically talking to farmers and advising on stewardship schemes and sorting BPS, applying for grants, like the slurry storage grant that's come out. There was the adding value grant, all that sort of stuff. So interesting, doing lots of stuff, and obviously going through the agricultural transition plan is interesting. And 1 minute something's this and then it's that, and it's all over the place. But it's good. I'm enjoying it.
Good. And you started when did you say, sorry?
In June 2022. Yeah.
So
6 months.
No, very good. For those of you listening, we're going to take we're going to move away from conventional, certainly British farming. Sorry, my mum's phoning me. Who knows what it is? Go away, mum. Sorry, that was quite rude. She'll probably listen to this. Sorry, mum. But I said earlier on the podcast, there was something that Bizza had posted, and I was like, I need to get in touch. I need to speak about this. I need to hear what's happening. I'm going to introduce it with a very strange story. We hear about the sort of idea of legalization of drugs, and is it going to be a good thing and whatnot. And I'm just watching Bizza's face off camera here to see how she's thinking this introduction's going. And there's the idea that Class A drugs, if they're legalized, it might actually be better. Now, that's not a discussion we need to get into. I've got opinions on it, but that's a completely different thing. Have you ever considered what the legalization of sort of taking the horn of rhino, farming rhino, so on and so forth, might open up? Now, I'm going to try and say something here, Bizza, and you'll probably be able to correct me if I'm wrong. We think of rhino horn as ivory, but I believe that's just actually elephant. Is rhino horn keratin? Is that right? Yeah. But the reason I'm talking about this is Bizza has travelled to Africa and has been somewhat involved in this side of things. So Bizza, could you just tell us about that whole experience? Because from that one post I saw, it sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was incredible. So when I was at university, we have a lot of Africans that come over to study, especially from Zimbabwe, South Africa, Kenya, all those areas. And I met a guy at university. We started dating, and he was Zimbabwean, but with all the troubles that they had, their farm was taken away from them, and him and his mum and his sister moved down to South Africa. His mum had a new partner, and he owned a game reserve near Kruger National Park in South Africa. And one thing that he was like, his life passion was trying to save rhino. So when I was out there, I went out there quite a few times, but when I was out there, I would go out every morning. They had horses that they would patrol the fence lines with around the reserve, because it was a closed reserve. So we would go out patrolling fence lines, checking for tracks, and it was purely all because poachers were trying to come in and take these rhino horn. So the Asian market is the main buyer. Well, it's on the black market, but it's the main buyer of these horns. And it's, thousands and thousands of years of traditional like tales that rhino horn has medicinal properties. So if you've got cancer, if you've got a cold, if you've got hair loss, if anything wrong with you, as far as they believe, rhino horn will cure it. Right. So that's the battle they're up against, is they're trying to educate however many billions of people in Asia, like China, Japan, Philippines, like everywhere, that believe that this is a thing. And if you have a scraping of rhino horn in your tea in the morning, you're going to be cured of your cancer. So yeah, so that's where it all comes from. And so, I mean, poaching is just such a huge issue, and it's awful, because obviously, you've got these, I have to be really careful how I say it, because it's obviously trying to be politically correct.
For sure, yeah.
But basically they have, so the family that I was with, and my partner at the time, they were a white family, and they employed a lot of the local black community that would come in, and they would be the anti-poaching guards. They'd go out on horseback. They had anti-poaching dogs as well that would track scents if they got onto any scent, if someone had been in the reserve. And I'm not saying at all that this is what happened there, because touch wood, we never had a problem with poaching while I was there. But if you have a middleman, say, so you've got the people that will buy the horn, the ones in Asia. You've then got loads of middlemen, the ones that get it across borders, that fly it out of airports, and the ones that also go and physically poach the rhino. Yeah. And these middlemen will go up to, whether they're in their local bar or whatever in their community, and someone will come in and they'll say, right, I will give you $1,000 cash. And they'll say this to an anti-poaching guard, I'll give you $1,000 cash if you can go out and get me a rhino horn in the next week. But because the anti-poaching guard knows exactly, like, the movements of the rhino, they know the reserve, they know the behavior, they've got a family to feed, this is the black community, it's so poor, they're going to go out and they're going to go and poach a rhino. So that's like where the corruption comes into it. And you put your trust in these people to try and help you save this animal from extinction, but if they've got someone offering them, probably like a year's worth of wages or whatever, they're going to, and they can feed their family, they're going to go out and poach a rhino, aren't they?
Yeah, and you totally get that,
Yeah, you do. And my dad said to me, or if I was ever in that position, I had to do it for the you lot, I'd think very long and hard about it. And you know what I mean? It's so, and as much as they try and educate them, and they go out to schools and try and educate the children, because obviously that's where it will start, if they can educate them from a young age. But if someone's going to approach them with a wad of cash and say, go and get me a rhino horn, they're going to go and do it.
It's true, like what your dad says, though. I mean, it's your kids, isn't it? I mean, until of course you used to go to the Wrong Young Farmers Club, but it makes a lot of sense that happens because of that. But I was trying to I was looking into it a bit, and from what I understand, you were talking about cancer and whatnot in Asia. It's believed that would sort of solve it, if you will, or cure it. It's not also known to be an aphrodisiac. That's the thing I was always afraid of. I thought that.
Yeah, it's like anything that's wrong with you. Apparently, rhino horn cures it, but it's keratin. Like it's your nail. You know what I mean? Like, cut your nail and put it in your tea if you're that desperate for it. It'll do. It's yeah.
Is there a way? This is going to be a question that a lot of people are going to be like, Wallace, how could you possibly think that? But that's how my brain works. Is there a way to quote unquote farm rhino horn and it still be done sustainably, ethically, or is that not possible?
In my opinion, yes. So, I spent a lot of time out there, and the photo you're referring to, I know which one it is. It's the one where I'm painting oil on, well, now a stump, which is on a rhino. So we spent a lot of time out and about, and it's a huge operation. It's so expensive. But the charity that kind of this family that I was staying with set up would get donations, and they would use that money to go out and dehorn rhino. So we'd go out and about, we'd set off at like 4 a.m. in helicopters with vets, and there's ground team and there's guards everywhere, and it's a huge operation. And before, obviously, it gets really hot, so you've probably got like a 6-hour window. We'll go out in the helicopter, track a rhino, try and find a rhino that's got its full horn or 2 horns, dart it to sedate it, and then the ground team run in, kind of stabilize it so it's not wobbling about. And you can imagine how big these animals are. So you've got like 50 odd people involved in this operation. It's huge. And you also, the rhino can't be down for probably longer than about 20 minutes because it's such a huge animal. It squishes its organs if it's down for long. So you've got to be quick. And you then get an angle grinder and a chainsaw, take the horns off. These horns then go. So bearing in mind, I think rhino horn at the minute, a kilo is worth $70,000. And
that's about double gold.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So these horns probably weighed 8 kilos. So you think that's like $500,000 worth of keratin. And because the trade of rhino horn is illegal, these horns then get taken to a vault in Johannesburg where they stay forever and they just sit there.
Right.
You can't touch them, you can't go and see them, you can't take them out, you can't do anything with them. They're tagged, and then they go with all the shavings of when you wouldn't know if you went to a site that there'd been a dehorning because they pick up every single bit of horn. And then it goes off to these vaults in Johannesburg and just sits there. So what a lot of people are trying to do is get the trade of horn legalized so that you can then flood the market, sell all these horns that are firstly sat in these vaults, because there's probably billions of pounds or dollars worth of horn sat in these vaults that can't be touched, flood the market, and then it will bring hopefully down the poaching rate. But also if you farm rhino for their horn, again, you can sell it like a legal commodity, and it's like shearing a sheep. It doesn't hurt them, it grows back. I mean, the only thing is you've got to sedate them to do it, but these are really experienced people. The vets are absolutely phenomenal. They're dealing with rhino every day, so they know what they're doing. It's an expensive operation, but if you can sell the horn on, you can then fund the dehorning, and it would be like farming sheep for their fleeces.
Yeah, no, it's the exact same thing. If it is a complete, fine process, and it sounds it absolutely.
And you have to dehorn every 2 to 3 years.
Well, I was just about to ask, how quick does it grow back?
But that wouldn't be full size. That would be like I don't know, like a stump, like that size stump. I don't know how big that would be.
It's still about
7-8 inch stump, maybe.
$250,000 worth of money.
Crazy, isn't it?
What's the life expectancy of a rhino?
Oh gosh, now you're asking.
It doesn't matter if you don't know. I'm just wondering. No.
15 years, maybe.
Right. And do you know?
I've made
No.
that.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Do you know if they're rumen? I've got a feeling they're monogastric, but I don't know. Are you sure? No. I don't know. Now you've mentioned.
I don't think they're ruminant. I don't think they're.
No, I'm pretty certain they're not. I've got a feeling they're hindgut. I think they're the same as horse. I think, but you don't know me all that well, Bizza, but folk that do know me know that now I've heard of a new thing, rhinos. Today is just going to be looking up rhinos. Know everything about them. I hope you've kicked your feet up and got comfy and enjoying another fantastic episode of the R2Kast with another really interesting guest. I would just like to quickly take another second to plug the sponsors of the show today, the Scottish Farmer, and I would strongly advise you to go out and pick one up this week and see even more of the fantastic people that are in our industry. I still didn't fully get, why are they locked away? I didn't quite.
Their horn?
Yeah.
Because they've been harvested and taken legally. You've dehorned them, so you haven't gone in and poached them, basically. Because it's illegal to sell them, they're not going to leave you with, like me, for example, with a rhino horn, because I'm going to go and sell it on.
For sure,
yeah. So they get tagged, the horns get tagged, ID'd, and then they get taken, flown off to Johannesburg and locked away for eternity.
And who owns that horn?
The person who owns the rhino. So if it's a reserve, so like Kruger is owned by, it's a South African national park, so they would own the however it works, but not a person, it's like whoever, the national park own that horn. But the family I was staying with, because it was a closed reserve, they owned the rhino on that reserve. Like, I'm not obviously going to say any names, but a gentleman there owned the rhino. So when we dehorned the rhino on the reserve, they were his horns.
Right.
So he owned those horns, and they were like millions and millions of dollars worth of horns that he just had to send off.
But as you say, sorry, on you go.
I was just going to say, it's not like he can go and sell them and then put the money back in to the reserve, like conservation and.
But like almost the second that he can, it's not going to be worthless, but it's going to be so low because everyone's going to do it.
Yeah.
Albeit that's very unfair on those rhino owners, it also probably will, like you say, not stop poaching, but certainly reduce it hugely.
It'll reduce it, yeah. Well, hopefully,
Maybe not.
we don't know because it's not happening at the minute. It's still illegal to trade rhino horn.
Is that a thing that you think could happen? It becoming legal?
I don't know. I haven't been there since I haven't been there for 3 years, so
no, for sure.
I wouldn't know. I'm a bit out the loop, but I think if they were going to do it, they probably would have done it by now. Like there was such a huge push on it out there, and there's all these charities, and people were protesting and all the rest of it. And when I was down in London in October running the marathon, and there were people running the marathon dressed as rhino for the rhino. So people are still trying really hard and all the rest of it, and it's still not happened. So I can't see it changing personally.
Yeah, which is a shame because it looks like there is a potential solution there.
Yeah. And then that's why I said I have to be careful with what I say, but it all boils down to corruption, doesn't it?
Oh, of course it does.
At the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
And you mentioned that you mentioned Zimbabwe at one point, and just a sort of little caveat. For those of you listening, if Zimbabwe is in any way interested, in the next few weeks at some point, I will be arranging a podcast with Blythe, who's based in Zimbabwe. She is a blueberry agronomist. She went to uni where I went to uni, but she was brought up in Zimbabwe, and she unfortunately as well, Bizza, was one of the people that suffered hugely throughout clearances. But that I haven't filmed it yet. She unfortunately had malaria over Christmas. So okay, yeah. But she said she was like, "Oh, I've got malaria," and I'm like, "Oh my god."
Yeah, no, it's such a normal thing. I spent New Year's in 2017 in Zimbabwe in Victoria Falls, and I remember my mum, because she spent a lot of time in Africa as well, was like, "You need to take malaria tablets with you." But then I was advised not to get them in the UK because we don't have malaria here. So when I got out there, I then had them. But it's like such a normal thing. To get malaria. It's like getting a cold.
Well, yeah, it just seemed that way. And she sent me a voice. It was like, "I'm not faking it," and I'm like, "I don't need proof. I believe you're not well." I believe you. Exactly.
But it's the most beautiful country, Zimbabwe.
I was going to say Victoria Falls is gorgeous.
Yeah.
From photos, I've not been.
Stunning.
Yeah. Well, quite jealous actually. But also, I'm going to take a massive jump back here, like almost half an hour ago. And this is for folk listening. If you want to lamb, if you want to get into sheep farming, as I mentioned, the NSA website, it is brilliant. At lambing time, probably we're filming pretty much in the turn of the year at the minute. They'll be starting to populate jobs across the country, and it could be jobs for folk with absolutely no experience that might be very low paid or just purely paid for accommodation, food sort of thing, or experienced jobs, fully paid, well remunerated. But it's a brilliant website. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's where I found a lot of mine, and I emailed, oh my god, I must have emailed about 20 people. But the thing is, because I was doing it as a job, a lot of them, they will pay, some will pay, but most of them want like students that will come for experience. So they were saying, "Oh, thank you, but we actually, we're not in a position to pay you a full wage," which was fine, Yeah. But for any students or anyone that wants experience, it's a brilliant website. It's really good.
No, I think I get 2 jobs off of it. I embarrassingly did a night lambing once and managed 3 days before I ended up in hospital, so that was fun.
Oh, that's impressive.
It was pretty good going, pretty good. I managed to slip on a cleaning and tear the cartilage in my knee.
Ouch.
It's normal. I've had like 4 operations on it, but it was just quite an embarrassing crawl down to the farmhouse.
Yeah, I bet.
You know how we just managed to get you sorted with a night lammer?
Well, no.
But yeah, no, very good for finding the right place. Bizza, you've done it all. You've had to go at everything. You're only 24, did you say? Is that right?
Yeah.
So you fitted a lot in. You're chairperson, obviously, currently of the Young Farmers Club. Do you see yourself going into area office, or do you see yourself?
No, I don't think so. I'll stick with club. Yeah.
Happy we are. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Good. Mentioned Young Farmers there. If you want to hear about folk progressing more in the sort of Scottish side of Young Farmers, SAYFC, there's a podcast number 57 with Colin McKinnon, number 63 with Jane Strawhorn. Colin is a district chairperson, and Jane is a national vice chair, soon to be chair. So if you want to hear about the sort of processes further after where Bizza is, also Bizza, for yourself, I don't actually know how close this is to you. Do you know farmer Luke Ablett down in Daintree Farm?
Yes, I have met Luke. Yeah.
He seems involved sort of. He's obviously he's told to be a young farmer anymore, but he's involved sort of higher up in organising as well. So if you want to hear his story from the sort of working at young farmers, I think that'll be R2Kast number 70. It's not released yet. 74 it'll be. So have a look at that. But Bizza, there's two questions I ask everyone before we finish every podcast. And the first one is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? So what will 29-year-old Bizza be doing?
Oh my God, 29-year-old Bizza.
Yes, scary, isn't it? 5 years for me is now over 30. I don't like that. And also, if you had any tips for folk coming into farming, what would they be?
Okay. So 5 years' time, I would like to have a commercial flock of my own. I said to myself, I want to start that in 2023, but I'm not sure if that'll be possible. But 5 years' time, I want to have my own area of land. I don't want to be reliant on home because of family politics and issues. It's just easier if I can get away from here, have my own land somewhere and do my own thing. And I can say, I've done this myself. That's how I want to do it. So that's the plan for 5 years' time. And then anyone getting into farming, probably just keep going, like keep pestering people, keep asking questions. You know, even if you think you're being annoying, just keep being annoying, because the industry needs people. I mean, it's desperate for people. My dad's 60 and he's the average age of a UK farmer now.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've got to do something about it, and we've got to do it pretty quick. So yeah, just keep asking questions. I mean, I'm heavily involved in the NFU now, but I remember when I first went to a meeting, I went with Dad, and because it's notoriously known for being an older gentleman club, I think it's fair to say, they looked at me when I walked in and they were like, oh my gosh, like what and who is this? And I kept going back and I kept asking questions, and I probably kept being annoying. But now, you know, a year down the line, I'm invited to everything. I was guest speaking at Christmas meetings, and they're really hospitable to me. But you've just got to break down that boundary, and it's a generational thing. And you just have to keep going, keep breaking it down, and eventually you'll get there and you'll be fine.
And folk like yourself are important in breaking that down for the next people 100%. That want to try as well. Makes it easier.
100%, yeah. And you just have to be, you know, strong enough and confident enough to, you know, although I went to this meeting and no one spoke to me, and I sat there and I thought, oh my God, why am I spending my Tuesday night sat here being ignored? Like no one would even look at me. And I thought, well, you know what, Bizza, if you don't do it, there's not many other people that are going to. So I kept going back, kept being annoying. So yeah.
You say annoying though. I mean, maybe annoying is the word, but it's a thing. Yeah, push yourself out there. Those that don't push themselves out. What's the thing?
Yeah,
what's that saying? What is it? Nothing's gained within the comfort zone.
Yeah, and that's very true. Because I've grown as a person from it as well. Because, you know, I can now walk into a room of people I don't know at a conference or an event or whatever and think, well, I've done it before where no one even said hello to me, so I'll be fine.
No,
so I mean, I go off. I like a year ago, you asked me to do this podcast, I probably wouldn't have done it because I didn't have the confidence to do it. No, I didn't have any confidence to do it. And you know, speaking at these events that I spoke at back in earlier in December, a year ago, absolutely not, I would not have done that. But because I forced myself to go back to these meetings and go, you know, and meet new people and go to new places, and now I do it on my own. You know, I don't have Dad with me or a friend with me. I'm happy to go and do it on my own. I go down to London to, you know, events and conferences, and I'm confident to do it. So yeah, that would be my advice. Just kind of get your blinkers on and just keep going.
It's very
then
similar.
You'll finally wake up and be like, oh well, what was the problem? This is fine, and I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, and it's great fun. Speaking in front of folks, amazing. Your advice was very similar to, I'm pretty sure someone you know, Amy Wilkinson. Her thing was, the tip was just 20 seconds of blind, stupid confidence. And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, just forget about everything that's going to go wrong. Say yes to everything. And then in 20 seconds, you'll freak out, but you've already done it. You've got to do it now. And I'm like, that's so cool. I love that.
And then before you think about it, it's done, it's over. And you're like, oh my God, I just went and spoke to such and such a person that I would never have done 6 months ago. Or
Yeah.
I've just gone and done this speaking event, which like I've just done this podcast now, but this time last year I wouldn't have done.
Yeah, well, that's got to be a positive movement.
Yeah, 100%. And it just shows how you as a person also grow.
Apart from the fact you have to speak to me for an hour.
Well, thank God it's only an hour. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. We'll go off this podcast.
No, not at all. It's been brilliant.
One thing I completely forgot to mention, if you are listening and want to check out Bizza, Adventures of a Shepherdess, is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Adventures of a Shepherdess is her Instagram. I kind of probably should have talked a bit more about Instagram. When did you start posting on Insta?
I started that page 2 years ago now. Well, when I went on this lambing journey, my adventures in 2021, because I was kind of just spamming my personal Instagram with like sheep and stuff. And my parents went, Bizza, you know, people don't want to see pictures of your sheep every 5 minutes. Like, they're lovely, but they really don't. So I thought, okay, fine, I'll do like a separate bloggy sort of thing. And it was literally just so because my aunties, that one of my aunties that lives on the farm, she was like texting me every 5 minutes, like, where are you? How's it going? What are you doing? Where are your sheep? How's everything? And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna have to start a page, follow this, and then everyone can see it. And I don't have to tell you all individually. And it's great that they were so invested, but I was like, I'm actually working. I've got things to do. So that's how it started, just something for family, literally for family to follow. And then it's gone bigger.
No, it's very good. It's post a lot of good stuff on it. So check Adventures of a Shepherdess out on Instagram. Another podcast down. Fantastic story opened up. We went to Africa, we went to Iceland, we've been everywhere. So thank you very much, Bizza. I hope you had a good time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's nice to speak about South Africa because obviously it's a part of my life that's kind of been and gone.
Yes.
But actually, and I haven't spoken about it until I went to these events and I touched on it, and it was like the highlight of most people's evening was hearing about it because it's something so different. So it's nice to actually start talking about it again.
Well, that's it. And I think we said off camera, like, you know, the fact you've been lambing in Orkney in Iceland is really cool.
Yeah.
But everyone's been lambing, you know, and that's interesting, but this is new.
Not many people have dehorned a rhino.
No, I think you were the first person I've had on that's been involved in that.
Or painted hoof oil on a rhino. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's quite a life, that. And it's also quite nice, like you mentioned, like it's definitely a part of your life that's in the past now, but it's still a very positive experience to go with. So hope you've enjoyed listening to Bizza today. Next week, as I said, we'll have Michael Blanche, and then the following week, I think we will be having RSABI, so previously known as, I'm going to get this terrible, the Royal Scottish Agricultural Benevolent Institute. Now, don't go as that because, as you just saw, it's very hard to remember, and I probably got it wrong. RSABI, heavily involved in sort of support. You can see them as the Agricultural Samaritans in Scotland. Very involved in supporting mental health, that sort of thing. So that should be next Monday after Michael Blanche, and we will then see you for another R2Kast after that. Thank you very much for listening, and we will see you later on.
I hope you've enjoyed another excellent episode of the R2Kast. I just want to take this moment to quickly thank our primary sponsors once more, A-Plan Rural. If you follow A-Plan on social media, you'll see the work they're doing to really promote British farming and back our industry. It's been a pleasure working alongside A-Plan Rural so far, and long may it continue. The values of A-Plan Rural runs perfectly in line with the whole mantra of rural to kitchen, and I'm glad to have them on board. Check them out on Instagram at A-Plan Rural and on Facebook at A-Plan Rural Insurance. See you for the next podcast.